All right, why don't we go ahead and kick off? I know we are at the top of the hour as people are starting to filter in. So happy Wednesday, everybody. We're on Wednesday, right? I think we are. Days are running together. I'm Tammy Alvarez, founder of the Career Winner Circle, and I'm thrilled to have Julie Riga with us today. Julie is one of our newest coaches in the CWC family. She is an epic storyteller, communications expert, TED Talk speaker, author, all these things. And so, Julie, thanks for playing in our reindeer games today. It's always good to have you.
Thank you for having me today. Excited to be here.
I know we all have makeup on today. We're just talking about it's like, oh, we got makeup today. This is good. We're seeing everybody all fancy. So Julie, why don't we just get started as people are coming in the room? Maybe you can share a little bit about your background, your journey, and where all this passion comes from.
Well, sure. Thank you for the kind introduction and happy to be here with all of you. I recognize a lot of your faces and some of you I don't know yet. So my name is Julie Riga. I am a leadership coach, trainer, TEDx speaker, author, all those things that Tammy said I was, although she made me sound really amazing. And yes, I've done all those things. So thank you, Tammy, for that. I spent most of my career in the pharmaceutical industry, over 20 years working in big pharma. So companies like Novartis, Bayer, Johnson & Johnson, I spent most of my career there. And now what I'm really obsessed with is the future of work and helping leaders grow so that they are ready for the future of work and ready for the new AI technology that is storming through our lives. Each and every one of us have to think about this. We have to think about how it's going to affect what we're doing right now, what it's doing to the future of work, and what skills we need to develop right now to get ready for that new age that we're stepping into. So I'm obsessed with those things right now. I'm just like fueled with passion and purpose. And the story goes like this. 2 months before my father passed away, he left me his life story to finish. And so for 2 years, I have worked to develop his book. And his book is called Stay on Course, The Life and Legacy of Ennio Riga. And during the process of writing this book and some personal issues that I've had along the journey, I've recognized that there are things that I really love to do and things that I really don't like to do. And so that journey of understanding who I am and how I'm showing up in the world and what I'm doing matters. And I am clear on what I want to bring into the spaces that I'm in, and that is to help people get to a place where they're passionate and purposeful about what they do. And so it's because of a lot of these different life circumstances that sort of brought me to this place. So I'm just happy to be here with all of you today. I keep seeing people come on, so I'm excited to meet you all. I'd love to know like where you're from, who you are. Maybe you could just put some of that information in the chat. And so happy to be with you here today, Tammy.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So everybody light up that chat box. So we don't like passive attendees because you're going to get tired of hearing us talk eventually. So let me know where you're from and what was most interesting about you leaning in to our conversation today. So a big part of the one thing AI can't do is listen. It can replicate, it can search, it can do all those things, but it can't really listen yet. And I love that you're obsessed with AI, Julie, because it's really interesting. In a lot of our new publications, Kelly's making sure that we have a little stamp on top that said this was not produced by AI. A human being actually thought about this and wrote this. So yes, I'm old and a fossil and anti-AI right now. So you're going to have to help me get through that. But what we really want to do is talk about communication and such a big part of communication is, and what we think about is spewing out all the things that we have to say. And it's always, I got so much to say, but really the language of leadership is the ability to listen. And Julie has an amazing program that she's bringing just a smaller piece of to you today that really talks about as you're showing up as a leader, as you are getting your teams inspired and motivated and trying to get stuff done, that sometimes the less you say, the more impact you'll have. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, and obviously I will add my color commentary as needed. But why don't you go ahead and get us kicked off?
Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, everybody, I'd love to hear, okay, where are we at here? We have Leonardo from New Jersey. Happy to have you here. And we have Utah, Fort Myers, Florida in the house. Brazil, Texas. We are all over the world right now.
Mexico City, just saying.
Mexico City, Dublin. Oh, look at this. Ohio. I don't know why I thought that was going to be like, Dublin, Ireland.
Well, it's an international group, right? So it's easy to just assume that, yeah.
That looks like Ohio to me. Great, perfect. And if you want to turn your cameras on, we welcome you to turn your cameras on. And if you don't, we don't judge here. What I would love is some participation from you guys, because I think it makes it more fun. So if you'd like to turn on your cameras, please do so. And use the chat. So I'm going to ask some questions. One thing I recommend you do before we get started is just get a piece of paper and a pen, or find something on your computer where you can just jot some notes down, because I'm going to ask you to do some reflection during this time, because we are all listening all the time and life is going really fast. Would anybody raise their hand and say life is going really fast right now? It feels like to me that we can't kind of harness what's going on, right? And the way to do this is to be present. And once we're present, we can listen. So I'm going to take this slow, because that's the way I know that you will hear me. When I was in Italy, this is a good story. I was in Italy with my father, and I was trying to learn Italian. I'm like, Dad, I got to learn Italian. I got to learn, and I want to speak to my relatives. And you know what they said to me? They said, Julie, if you speak so slowly, I will understand you. And we are moving so fast. And sometimes we just need to slow it down just a notch, so that people can actually receive what we're saying, right? It is that we need to have a little bit of a reset. TikTok has got us to this place where, and I'm guilty. I am so guilty. I'm looking at this stuff and I'm moving forward. If I don't like what they're saying in the first 3 minutes, they're off my screen. So it is just a practice. We'll take it a little bit slow, because we are going to be doing some listening. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And as we are doing this, let's stay connected. Okay. Let's stay connected on the chat. And if you really would like to speak, I would love to hear you as well. Hey guys, what are you seeing right now on the screen?
Julie, we're not seeing screen share. We're just seeing the PowerPoint as, just a native PowerPoint.
Okay. So give me a second here.
I'm always the worst at that. So it's nice to know I've got competition for not being able to get tech to work the right way.
Of course. It's just.
There we go. Perfect. You're all set.
All right. Okay. So I teach a class called My Listening Habit, and it is all about listening. And I'm just going to give you a flavor of this today. We're not going to go into all of the details, but we're going to get a flavor of listening. And so where I want you guys to start is to think about who you're listening to. Who on a regular basis are you listening to? And maybe we could put this in the chat. Tell me about who you're listening to on a regular basis. I mean, unfortunately, I better not say that. I'm listening to my husband all the time because he is constantly talking. So he is mad at me most times because I'm not listening to him. But who are you listening to? Clients. We are listening to our clients. We are listening to our family members. We are listening to our children. We're listening to podcasts. We're listening to all these things that are going around. And how about yourself? Are you listening to yourself? That's a good one, right? How aware are we? Are we listening to the feedback that we have here? Right? So that's like, I'm going into a meeting, I am having an interaction with somebody, and I'm noticing I get triggered by something. That trigger changes our energy in that moment. So having an awareness around what is doing that is very helpful to give you information. So we're listening to clients, we're listening to family, we're listening to sponsors, stakeholders, key stakeholders in our organization. Understanding who you're listening to is helpful. And so when we think of those people, we want to think about what might be stopping us from listening. What are the roadblocks that we might have? And so to identify what might be in our way is helpful. And this is why I asked you to get the pen and the paper, because I want you to write and jot some things down. If you're having any self-awareness moments during this program and what I'm saying, jot it down. I want to know about that. I want to know about any aha moments that you're having during this journey. So let's have a discussion, and you guys can unmute. Love to see you on camera, but I want to know, why is it so difficult to listen? Why is it so difficult?
Can I go first?
Absolutely.
I am always worried about what I'm going to say next. I'm so busy trying to be clever that I don't always pick up on what I need to hear.
Good one.
Hi, this is Natalie. How are you?
Hi.
We had this conversation with friends last week, funny enough, for dinner, where we all had something to say, and it ended up by a jumble conversation. And we had the honest conversation. We talk too much. We have so much to say that ultimately we don't give time for others to breathe. And it's not about being cocky or arrogant. It's just that we're very passionate people and we have something to say. But at the same time, we just want to put that foot in your mouth to let others talk. That's the feedback I have so far from actually last week.
And it's so common, right? We want to get our words out. We want to say what we're thinking, and that is what we're doing as we are pretending or trying to listen. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Why is listening so difficult?
I find that because I work from home, as soon as I'm in interacting with people in person or whatever, I have so much energy that I just can't get it out of my mouth fast enough, right? I kind of start to dominate the conversation because I'm not physically around people all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what happens to the moment if you're doing that? What happens to actually what's happening in the moment?
I'm actually not connecting with people. Because I'm not necessarily listening. I'm doing so much of the talking. I'm not giving them the opportunity to connect with me, at that moment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Cool. Anyone else? These are all really good insights, and it's good to hear what other people are doing because you're not alone. None of us are alone. Susan, Tammy, we all do that. We all do it, whether we want to admit it or not, right? That's the point. Some of us are going to admit it and some of us are not, but it's happening to all of us. We're all having this human experience and we're all doing this. We're all forgetting that we're in moments with people. And in those moments, we're exchanging something. And if you're not present to what is actually happening, you miss it. And the moment is gone. So let's go into this. Let's get into this a little deeper. Is anybody excited to get deeper into this? I just want to see hands. Anybody excited? Because I'm excited to see where this goes. And again, if anybody wants to come on camera with us, that would be great. If you're eating your lunch, that's great too, because it's lunchtime, guys. We're eating lunch, in most places of the world. I don't know. There's a lot of different places, but it is lunchtime. So I welcome you to eat on camera or do whatever you want. There is no judgment here. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about why listening is so difficult. And you're going to be surprised to see some of these facts. So our thought speed is greater than our speaking speed. We speak about 125 words per minute, and we can understand 400 spoken words per minute. Isn't that crazy? So when we listen, we're using about 25% of our mental capacity, and we have 75% to do something else with. Deep stuff here, guys, deep stuff. Some of us were never formally trained to listen. I would love to get a little survey going in the chat. How many people have actually taken a listening class? I'm curious. You know, we learn all these things in college, but no one taught us how to listen. Isn't that strange? It's so strange to me that we were never formally taught to listen. It's really weird. But yet, everybody's got up. Samantha has taken a listening class. That is amazing. So we are inefficient listeners. We retain 50% of what we hear. And after 48 hours, only 25% is remembered.
Is that for people under 50?
Well, listen, thank you.
That 25% number for me personally right now.
I thank you for bringing that up because you just led us to the next one, Tammy. Listening skills suffer with age. Studies are indicating that our listening skills suffer as we get older. I wonder if it's because we think we're know-it-alls and we just stop listening because we lose our curiosity. Just saying. It is a curiosity factor, right? There is a wonder and awe about the word curiosity and how we were once as children, right? So if we could bring a little of that awe back into our lives, we'll see how much more we might listen. But it does say, maybe it's also the brain and menopause, and I'm not sure what men go through, but I'm sure they have something, you know, as they get into that middle stage of their life. But the truth is that listening is hard work. It is hard work to listen. You can become physically and mentally tired after concentrating. And you know what? The problem is some people are just really boring to listen to. Like really boring. And you know that I can't fix that. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in these classes or anything where the tone is monotone. They're saying things that are not resonating with you, and you're doing this. And you want to stay awake, but you can't. So listening is hard work, especially when the speaker is not dynamic and they're not pulling you into the experience. Because at the end of the day, these webinars, all these different things that we do, we're creating experiences, learning experiences, growth experiences. And if you're not in that place or you're not projecting the right energy, you could be putting people to sleep. I'm not just saying, guys, just saying. So let's continue. So Tammy has graciously accepted a big responsibility with me. We're going to read these off together. Okay. We're going to talk about 12 roadblocks to listening, and why I said in the beginning that why is listening so hard is that there's 12 roadblocks, 12, and we're going to go through them all. And as we go through them, I want you to jot down some aha moments, some moments that you may be thinking, wow, I do this and I do this all the time. Maybe if you start writing them all down and you're doing all of them, maybe you're going to star which ones you're doing most often, because in some instances we're doing all of these things, but let's go through them so you can identify what's happening and bring the awareness into the moment. Because that's the point of this session, is that we're bringing to awareness the things that are blocking us from being in the moment, because being in the moment is critical to our success as a leader. It's critical to our success to have good relationships, to be good parents, to be good coworkers. It's critical now to be listening. So with that, I'm going to start with the first one, and we're going to have a little fun with this. So as we're going through it, if you want to put something in the chat, I'm reading the chat while we're doing this. And let's just have some fun. Okay, cool. So number one is comparing. I'm comparing myself to the speaker and thinking that I could have done it better. I was a little judgy just a few seconds ago. Did you notice that? I was talking about speakers. I was a little judgy. So I could be doing this in real life.
Well, and you can also mind read. So when you're trying to think about what the person's really thinking or feeling, and it's this, what I call imposed empathy. And I've had this happen before where, let's say, and it's actually happened where somebody got fired, right? There was a reduction in force. They got fired. I've been fired twice. So I was like, oh, it really sucks. I'm sorry. And it's imposed empathy. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm getting a massive package. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of here. And so when you feel like you're in those mind reading moments, and think about that imposed empathy with that. So I've been definitely falling afoul of that more than once.
Number 3 is rehearsing what you will say next and thinking instead of listening. This is what Tammy says that she's doing. And I bet we're all doing it because I want to know what I'm going to say next. I want to sound smart also. So I'm going to rehearse it. And then I'm going to say it, and I'm going to miss everything the person just said. How am I even responding right at that moment?
Excellent. And then we've got filtering. And so that is hearing what you want. And whether you're focusing on messaging and body language, or whether I used to manage sales teams. And so I used to call it happy ears because they would hear what they want to hear. And as soon as they got a yes, they assumed they had a sale, and they didn't. So filtering is something I think we all do, either cueing in on physical or emotional responses, or just getting that one little nugget that you were hoping to get.
Number 5, prejudging someone, not withholding judgment until after you've heard and evaluated the message. So as they're talking, I'm actually judging them. Sounds ugly. Sounds ugly.
All right. Number 6 is dreaming off into another place. So I find I am most guilty of this towards the end of the day when I'm tired and when I'm not at my best from an energy perspective. So yes, or when you're in those meetings that just won't end, or you have those people that just have to hear themselves talk to prove that they were in the room. Those are very, very common times where you're just off in your own happy place.
Tammy, I gotta admit, this is one of my moments of admitting. I'm dreaming about like what I'm eating next a lot of times. Like I am constantly thinking about food. Like what am I going to eat for lunch? Okay, so number 7, identify what the person is saying to everything that has happened in your life. You speak about you, and you never get to know a person. This is what we call level 1 listening. I'm not going through the 4 levels, but this is a very level 1 listening moment. Do you ever have those friends that like you'll say something and then all of a sudden they'll turn it back to them?
Yes.
And you're like,
Julie, I just did the same thing. See what I just did there? Yeah.
You see what I mean? And like that to me is like, did you even hear what I just said? All right, wait, let's make it all about you now.
Because that's so much more fun. Okay, then we've got advising. And so as a coach, especially a CWC coach, where we do a decent amount of advising and coaching, we can also fall prey of this, where we are just big in trying to get our point across and get other people to tell us how right we are or how smart we are. And so, there's a time and a place for this, but this is not listening.
Number 9, arguing and debating, using sarcasm to dismiss a person's point of view, discounting people. Are we listening to win? Are we listening to win an argument here?
Oh, listening to win. That's a great one. And then being right. So in the chat, tell me, have you ever had a situation where, no matter what you did, that person has to be right? And if we all had those experiences, I know I have, and had those experiences. And then you finally are able to say, do you want to be right? Or do you want to be effective? Because you can't be both in this situation. So another roadblock to our listening.
Do you want to be right? What else do we have here? 2 more, Tammy. Two more. Derailing, changing the subject to avoid another topic you are not comfortable with. Addressing, and misplacing, using humor to change the conversation. Ah, that's interesting. It's like, hey, I'm just going to change the subject because I'm busy that day.
Or I'm super uncomfortable and we're not going to talk about this, right? And then the last thing is placating. And it was interesting because I've been doing a lot of interviews for this book that I'm writing. And I remember talking to one person who was doing a very courageous thing. And the board's like, you're doing the right thing. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. And she's like, I felt like I was just getting a pat on the head and saying, go away, little girl, we'll take care of this later. And so this whole placating concept happens everywhere.
Oh my gosh. So there are 12 roadblocks. I want you guys to take a moment of reflection and tell me which ones are resonating with you. Here they are. Here they are. Which roadblocks do you have in your own listening process? Put it in the chat. I want you to think about what are the top 3 that you're suffering with, because maybe if you can have some awareness about when this is happening, you can bring your presence back to the moment. I'm going to wait a second for you guys to process all of this. Nathaniel, identifying, being right, placating. Tammy, mind reading, rehearsing, dreaming. Christine, 3, 5, 8, and 9 with husband. Isn't it amazing to just think about when we're really just not listening? My friend, why I said that I'm busy that day, my friend once asked me to go horseback riding. And she said, Julie, you want to go horseback riding? And I said, you know what? I'm busy that day. She goes, but I didn't ask you what day it was. And I'm like, that's the point. I'm busy. No matter what day it is, I'm busy that day. So we made up this whole song about being busy that day. It was funny, it became this long-standing joke, but I think that was a derailment moment. I just tried to change the subject. Dreaming, filtering, comparing, rehearsing, identifying, derailing. Tell me, does seeing these things sort of give you that, oh gosh, I really do this and I probably shouldn't? Anybody get a zing when you look at this?
For sure, for me. Oh yeah, I do those.
Anybody else want to contribute? I see a lot of head nods. You want to unmute and tell me what you're thinking?
I'll go. Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say that there's been a lot of times I've been thinking about what my response will be, especially if I'm formulating an argument with someone and I'm trying to understand their side, but also convey my side. So yeah, that resonates with me and some of the other ones as well.
We can coach on that later, Christine.
Yeah.
Good. Who did someone else want to contribute to the conversation? I heard somebody try to say something. Okay, so let's talk about mindset. And what I want to know is what mindset you would like to apply as we move forward into this. How do you want to show up? Now that you're aware of the 12 roadblocks that you might have, what is the mindset that you might want to have? Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. I mean, I don't know. Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, is the foundation, literally, of what I do and how I have progressed. That is my very first book that I became obsessed with. Anybody else know this book and become obsessed with it? Seek first to understand and then be understood. That is one of the habits. And so we want to think about this. Are we listening to win? Are we rejecting or telling the other person they're wrong, even if it's for generous reasons and you're nice about it? Are we listening to win? Or are we listening to fix? I mean, so many of us have spent our lives trying to fix other people, right? Are we listening by offering a solution, sometimes disguised as a question, or asking questions intended to help or offer a solution? Are we listening to fix somebody? Or are we listening to learn? Are we listening to understand it from their perspective as they understand it? Are we listening to learn? Are we listening for curiosity? Are we listening to find out what's going on in the moment? So, I would like to know your thoughts on this. You know, this weekend, I'm going to tell a quick little story. I have a big birthday coming up. I won't tell you how old I'm going to be, but I bought myself a little gift. And I bought myself this bracelet. It's a heart. And in the bracelet, the reason why I bought this, I knew I was going to use this in a class. I knew I was using this, and that's why I bought it. But inside, it says, be filled with wonder and touched by peace. Be filled with wonder and touched by peace. And I thought about that for a long time. Be filled with wonder. Be filled with curiosity, the childlike wonder you had once before. If you bring that into each moment, you are listening to learn. How many people try to bring the curiosity in? Try to bring the wonder into each moment. How many of us try? And then we lose it, right? We lose it because of all those reasons. But it's good to think about these things and be aware of it. This is like a self-awareness moment. This is like, I like to call these little sessions spa treatments for your growth. And I like that because it is a spa treatment. We're taking time out right now to really think about how we're showing up. And I think that's important. So what is next? What's next here? So guess what, guys? We only listen once. We only listen once. We only get one chance to listen. People spend between 70 and 80% of their day engaged in some form of communication, and about 55% of their time is devoted to listening. Listening to nagging or complaining for 30 minutes or more can cause damage to a part of your brain that handles problem solving. And most people usually only remember 17 to 25% of the things they actually listen to. So I would like to invite you to the power of now. The power of being mindful versus having your mind full. And what does that mean? Be here, be now. Be in the moment as much as you can. Have a technique or a tool to bring you back to the moment if you find yourself in those 12 roadblocks. Set your intentions, be your authentic self, and avoid assumptions. Avoid assumptions about people, right? That's avoiding the judgment. So in service to being present. So final thoughts, Tammy, final thoughts about this interesting topic of listening.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was distracted. What was your question? No, I'm just kidding. I think there's two things that really resonated with me in terms of the message that you're bringing to the CWC community today. And one is that curiosity. Because I think as we age, we lose our curiosity. And I know for me personally, I seek out new experiences with a vengeance because everything just feels so routine. You've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, you've heard it all, you've seen it all. And so I think when you pretend and realize that you actually don't know as much as you think you know in the concept of listening, and really seek to understand. And I know one of the biggest things in terms of employee engagement and employee satisfaction and people who trust each other when they're in a work situation, they don't want to be heard. They want to be understood. And so, really resonated with me in terms of like, recapturing that personal curiosity, but also sometimes you think like, my people need to be heard. Like, no, they don't. They need to be understood. And so what can you do as a leader with your business relationships and even your personal lives to really, really help and make sure that you understand and that they know that they've been understood? So I think those two things for me were the biggest takeaways in terms of, this is how you level up your communication skills. This is how you improve your relationships. This is how you shorten the know, like, and trust cycle when you're meeting someone new and trying to build that trust. And so those two things are really a cornerstone for me.
Wow. And we've only been talking for like 15 minutes here.
Yeah.
That was a lot. I'd like to hear from some more people. There are people here that I don't know. I would love to have you come on camera or just hear your voice and kind of get some feedback from you on what's resonating. Or the question can be, what are you curious about right now? And if we go in that space of what are you curious about right now in your own awareness, like, what are you curious about what you're going to do next? Like, I'm curious about how I might implement some of these ideas into my everyday life so that I become more present to the moment. Samantha, I see your hand raised. Go ahead. I think you're on mute.
Yes, I was. I apologize. I put my headset up. I wanted to say that I think meditation is a good way to become more aware of yourself and become aware of how you stray from what you're supposed to be doing, which is, listening, of course, in a conversation with somebody, and how to pull yourself back into it as well. And so as you were talking, I was thinking about, how your thoughts tend to stray. And even as you were talking, I was kind of like, what's going on my other screen? Oh, come back to here, and so I know that's a good principle is to increase your mental focus, and to be able to do those kind of exercises like meditation or other, types of focusing tasks, do that. So anyway, just those are the kind of thoughts that were popping into my head as you were talking.
I love that, Samantha. And absolutely, meditation is going to be the greatest way for you to hear your own thoughts, right? But I'm wondering as well, how do you take that moment of meditation? And I think this is part of this, to do it before a meeting, to do it before your next interaction that's important, to bring your presence back to that particular space and to put on the right hat that you need in that moment. How are you showing up? And that's a intentional thing sometimes. So I love that. Thank you, Samantha.
Well, I was going to say, to answer your question, somebody actually said something the other day that, really stood out to me. They were about to go to a networking event and they said, I've got a plan to go to the networking event. And for me, I was like, I just show up and figure out what's going on, and I just kind of do that. But for them, they actually sit back and think about a purpose, of what are they trying to achieve? Who do they want to meet if they know who's going to attend? And, just putting intention on it. So that kind of made me think of okay, so if you're going to go into a conversation with somebody and you really want to, make sure that you're listening, that, you put that intention on there, I want to get, XYZ out of this meeting or something, and, be able to listen, for that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that share. That's amazing. Setting the intention.
Yeah, and I think Natalie also had her hand up. I think it went down, but we had another one.
Yes, Natalie, hi, how are you?
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. To Samantha's point, I think the intention is actually something that I think we all go through. in that it's so easy to get lost in everything we have to say, because we are all in that strategic mode, as I mentioned earlier on writing, is that there's always a strategy to what we need to accomplish at the end of that day. And even if you go in with a plan, sometimes that plan gets derailed. So it's always going back to trying to focus on that agenda that is extremely important. And is it hard? Is it hard? Absolutely. And I don't think anybody can factually say that I've accomplished everything I meant to do that day, because I think it's easy to get derailed only because situations what they are, and you're always strategic in what you do because of what you have to accomplish. And what I was 18, I'm still the same person at 55, unfortunately. I have to admit that to a fault. Do I listen better? Absolutely, because I deal with candidates and clients all the time. But my grandmother, this is just a little sweet little thing. My grandmother used to tell me, turn your tongue 7 times in your mouth before you speak. And I've kept that my entire life, and that's what basically keeps me not derailed. I just constantly put that in my head when I feel myself going off the beaten path.
Wow, that is great. I love that trick. That's a good trick.
She was a World War II survivor, so yeah.
That is a really good trick. Yeah, the World War II. My grandmother is a World War II survivor too, and she used to say stuff like that, like.
Exactly.
So I love that. And that's like a physical thing that you can do to bring your presence back. And so whatever it is you're going to do, I'm going to look at this bracelet that I have on my hand and remind myself that I need to stay in the moment. And so I love the ideas that you have, like your own method. Everyone needs their own method, their own way that's authentic, that's going to help them get to that place. Hey, Nathaniel, good to see you. I saw you just come on camera. Did you want to contribute?
I'm just listening.
Great job,
Very-
Nathaniel.
It's a very novel approach, listening. That's great. Thank you, Nathaniel. Nice to see you.
Go ahead,
Julie,
Christine.
I'm reminded of kind of where you started this conversation, which was you were going to slow down. And I think a lot of when I am not listening is this sense that I have to respond immediately after the person has finished talking, instead of giving myself a beat to think, to process, which would give me the time to do some of the things that I'm doing while they're talking instead of listening. And so that I think that really ties into some of the other comments about setting intentionality and, thinking about what you want to say before you say it. But if you kind of just slow yourself down a little bit, if I slow myself down a little bit, then it gives me more space to hear and listen to what is being said, process it, and then respond the way I really want to.
Yeah, that's really good. And then if there's people that you have that you're connecting with on a regular basis, let them be aware that this is happening. It will take pressure off of you.
Yeah.
Listen, we work together a lot, and I appreciate what you're telling me and what we're working on. I might take a minute to pause and think. I just want to let you know that I'm not listening, but I'm processing, and I can be more present to the moment if I'm letting you speak and then me processing my next thought. I think it's brilliant to be able to have these conversations with people you work with on a regular basis. We forget that we can do that, guys. Like, we forget that we can have these dialogues with people to make things better, right? And so if you do that, it just makes everything better. So now you're creating a team norm around what it is you're doing in the moment and how you're staying connected and present, and then holding each other accountable to that. Because at the end of the day, the best work you're ever going to have is going to be in the moment. Innovation comes from the moment. Innovation comes from silence. Without silence, you can't think. And without thinking, you cannot innovate. So it's a ripple effect. This is a ripple effect. I love that, Christina. Thank you. Anyone else? This is a really fun conversation. I'm having fun. I don't know about you guys.
Well, that's all that's important, right, Julie? No, I'm just kidding.
It's really about all my amusement and fun. That's all
That's
it's
it,
about.
right? So, but the other thing I want to challenge everyone with, because I am as guilty of this as everybody else, is the impact that technology and the on-demand culture that we live in has in our ability to be present. And I think I'm far worse at this in my personal life than I am in my professional life, right? If we're in a coaching session, all my tools and toys are down and I'm zoned in. But everything else, I remember sitting in meetings and cruising my phone or responding to a text or doing this or whatever. And so how much of that is showing up for you? You know, when you need to be present, you know, can you turn off your alarms and alerts, shut down your email, leave your phone in another room, God forbid, and really be present?
Oh my God, Tammy, I'm cracking up because that is exactly my life. I multitask all the time. And then, but when I do try to be mindful and present, I'm like focused on something, I do put my phone away. And my husband's like, where were you? I was trying to reach you. So it's so funny trying to balance, you know, that line, right? Of like not trying to do 19 things at one time and really listen in, and then trying to carve out your own space, right? To like have thoughts and conversations.
Yeah, it's hard. And I'm much worse at this in my personal life, right? But fortunately, you know, my partner Steve is the first one to call bullshit, right? He'll be like, you're done. It's my time now. And I love that because he'll just be honest. And I'm like, oh crap, I suck at this. Yes, you're right. Put my phone away, everything can wait. But I think, you know, the expectation that we have of others to respond right away. Like, how many times have you sent a text? It's like, you read it, why didn't you respond? What's going on? You know, and the expectation we feel from others makes it very, very difficult to be present. And so, Julie, I loved your point of making space and having those conversations, right? So it's like, all right, I'm offline this weekend, right? Steve and I are going off the grid. We're hanging out, just the two of us. And if it's urgent, text our Mexican phone, because that's the only thing we'll have with us, right? And those types of things, just to make that space so that way you can be present. Because the more you practice it, the more you realize how fulfilling it is.
Yeah. You could hear things that you wouldn't have heard. You can hear the stuff that they're not saying if you're really listening.
Absolutely.
That's what I love about it. And you can hear the opportunities potentially. So that's what, like, I'm a little obsessed with being present. Not that I'm very good at it, because those things that we're like obsessed with, like, those are the things we need to grow in. So I'm not saying I'm the best at this, but I'm saying that there is something here that if we tap into it, it will open up a new opportunity for you to hear people in a different way. So what's the time? Okay, 12:48. If you would like to speak, I would love to hear from you. We still have a bunch of people online that I haven't heard from. So this floor is yours. And go ahead.
Yeah, so I just have a little point, and Tammy, you may be able to really relate to this. You know, listening to understand, I feel my skills have really increased living where I live. And that might be the same for you. I live in Belize. English may be the first language, but it's not the primary first language. A lot of Spanish speaking. And so you really have to up your game to be able to listen, because sometimes there, you know, things do get a little lost in translation. Even though everybody's both speaking the same language, it can really get lost. And so I feel like that has been one thing that has really allowed me to kind of, you know, up my skill set in that area. What do you think, Tammy?
You know, Kelly, I think you're spot on. And it's not just, you don't live in a foreign country, right? All you have to do is work with people who are multinational. And it took me a long time to realize that in certain cultures, yes doesn't mean agreement. Yes means understanding. And so I'd have these big meetings, all the heads were nodding, everybody was in agreement. I'm like, great, let's go. And then like, I'd walk out and 2 hours later, we'd have a conversation like, was I the only one there? Like, how can we all have such different points of view on the outcomes of what we agreed to? And so, I think it's just having those assumptions and those cultural biases that sneak in. Also, I think to your point, seek to understand, not to hear. You have to take extra care to do that for sure. That's an excellent point, Kelly.
Yeah, definitely. I do notice that when I'm working with people from other countries, I have to listen. It's almost like you have to be more present because you're not sure if you're missing something there. And that's a really good point. So I just want to tell you a little bit about more on what I have going on in my life. If you'd like to engage more with me, I have a podcast called Stay on Course, Ingredients for Success. And also the book that I told you about in the beginning. My father was an executive chef. And so everything that I do is about staying on course, and also wanting to let you know that I'm part of the CWC family. I am one of the coaches here at CWC, and I would love to invite you to a complimentary coaching call if you want to talk more about listening, being in the moment, anything that you may be struggling with. I'm going to be putting a link in the chat for you to sign up to get this information. And then I also have a personality communication style quiz also that you can download very easily if you just let us know. Kelly, can you put all those links up in the chat for people to enjoy? That would be great. And then, of course, Stay on Course, Ingredients for Success. This is my way to give back really good content. So all the stuff that I talk about is relative to corporate executives, leaders, people who are building businesses and things like that. So thank you for listening to all of what's going on in my world. And before we end, I'd just like to open it up for questions or comments or ahas, anything that you want to contribute to the conversation. We're here for the next 10 minutes or so. So anything that you're leaving with today.
I'm just happy to see that I'm not the only one in that mind listening piece. So thank you for this.
Yeah. So what was your biggest takeaway in terms of, okay, I'm going to start doing this different as soon as I'm off of here?
Well, I have to listen no matter what I do in my day every day, because I listen to candidates and clients in terms of what they want. And I think it's emphasizing even furthermore that I need to pay closer attention, as not just because I age, because I think age is just a number, and we are who we want to be no matter our age. But technology is definitely, I think, sometimes our enemy, and it is going too fast. And it does not allow us to do the job that we're supposed to do sometimes, because the demand is we want it now, we want it yesterday, an hour ago. And I think it's about communicating more with those we interact on a daily basis. Because if we have to listen and act upon that listening, then we need to be able to communicate with others more what expectations should be. I think from listening to everybody, I think that's, because we can all look at the mirror and say, okay, we're doing something wrong, but that's great and dandy. But I think communication, as we can see how the world is going, is definitely one that is, I think, just as important as anything else.
Yeah.
That would be my walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Julie opened up with AI, right? And just how it's changing the dynamics of everything, but there's still humans out there, right? And for now, we still rule the world, right? It may not last forever with all these, sci-fi things that are going on, but that human connection is just essential. And, if I think I've seen several studies where it's really interesting, where people who think they're the most self-aware actually are not. And I don't think that is a surprising revelation to anyone. So it's always good to test your blind spots. And if you're not sure how you're coming across, If you're not sure how you're being perceived as a listener, ask. Because you're going to have those people will tell you the truth. And I found that was always good, especially as I moved into different groups or different geographies. And my New Yorkness didn't resonate and actually worked against me in many cases. And so I would have to ask, I'm like, how am I showing up? And the other, you're a jerk. I'm like, okay, how do I not be a jerk? And, those types of things. So find those people who'll be honest with you, and just do a pulse check on how well you are coming across in terms of your ability to listen and communicate. So any other parting shots? I would encourage all of you, to get on Julie's calendar, right? So I know, Kelly, thanks for popping those links on. The ninja is busy at work, making sure you have everything in the chat. But Julie is a phenomenal coach and a great mentor, and an expert at doing all things communication and leadership. So I would highly encourage you to schedule some time with her, if you haven't already gotten on her calendar. So any other parting observations or questions that you want to bring up before we wrap up today? Okay. Julie, one last challenge for the group.
Stay in the moment. Have a practice that brings you back to your presence.
I love it. I love it. I would encourage you, if you don't already, having a practice for setting intentions to do it. I never did this. And I would just plow through my day, meeting to meeting to meeting, and not just really give any thought to anything. And as I became an entrepreneur, I sucked really bad at it. And so I had to rechange all the things that I knew and did instinctively and figure out how to get this done. And so got a coach, and she, and you guys who know me know I'm not airy fairy. I'm all about the mindset stuff, but the other stuff just doesn't, that's not really where my power is. And so, but she started talking about intentionality. And of course I'm bristled. I'm like, yeah, of course. Right. And she's like, no, like step away for 3 minutes and focus on what you want, how you want to show up for the very next thing you do. And so I'm like, all right, I'll try it. And it was amazing. Whether it was sitting down to do something that required intense focus, whether it was, going into a coaching session where I knew that my client was really on the struggle bus and would need me to be fully present. And even in my personal life, when my daughter calls, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give her, I got to be all in. And so I would encourage you, if you don't have a practice of building intention, to do that in micro moments throughout your day. Because from one non-airy fairy girl to another, it works. So just encourage you to do that in terms of what I'd like to leave you guys with today. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. Hopefully you have a lot of takeaways. And Julie, it's great to have you on the team. And I'm so glad to be able to showcase all of, or at least some of your gifts and talents that you bring to your coaching team. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So nice to meet some of you that I haven't met before. I would love to hear from you. If you want to message me here or on LinkedIn, love to keep the conversation going. So thanks for attending and stay present.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.